Welcome to Rebel Therapy Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Katie.
And I am your other host, Michelle.
And today we had a whole thing planned for y'all, but we've decided to shift that a little bit in alignment with what's happening around us. We are coming to you from Toronto, Canada. We are lucky enough to be in an environment that is relatively safe compared to other places in the world. But what we want to talk about today a little bit is sort of safety, our relationship to safety and how our bodies respond to danger and, sort of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like a particularly relevant topic and something that's in the collective consciousness. So it feels kind of a little bit too big and overwhelming to ignore and disingenuous to maybe just talk about something that feels sort of like this is about therapy and whatever. Like, obviously, we're going to take that angle, like that's our podcast, but something that's abstract and disconnected from the world around us just doesn't feel appropriate at the moment.
No, I think you're right. This sort of conversation came out of what happened in Minneapolis last week with the murder of Renee Nicole Good and just all the commentary around it and the way collectively people are dealing with that, whether you are in the United States or part of the rest of the world that I think is watching what's happening in the United States. Because this comes up with clients all the time, and right now it comes up a lot, is a desire to not pathologize the anxiety and despair and hopelessness and fear, or some combination of all of those things that so many of us are feeling. Does that make sense?
Yes, and to not make it an individual issue. Like, I have anxiety, and it's like somehow because I'm doing something wrong, or there's something I have control of in a larger sense that I actually don't. And that really you are not alone in it. And as you said before we recorded, it makes sense to feel these things, right?
Yes.
That means you're human and you're alive and you're responding to what's happening in the world.
I've actually said, especially to teenagers recently, they express feeling anxious or fearful or whatever. And I've said to them so many times, if you didn't feel that way, I would worry about you. Because to me, that's a completely normal and appropriate response that your body is having to this ongoing danger. And it is ongoing, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So if we are collectively in an environment, and it really makes us think about the pandemic, which nobody ever wants to talk about or ever go back to, obviously, collective trauma, it feels kind of similar. We're having this experience, and yet we still have to live our lives. If I'm 20 years old, I still have to go to school or go to my work or do whatever. The work that I like to do with people is really a couple of different steps. One is to acknowledge the feelings they're having and normalize those feelings because it makes sense to feel the way you do. The next step is to focus on ways to support themselves and their nervous systems so they can live through this experience and not be overwhelmed by the emotions that are normal and appropriate, but still we need to live our lives, right? So it's finding a balance. So it's not about eradicating, but it is about managing. Yeah?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think part of that first step of acknowledging or being able to notice, to be able to get into the felt sense of your body, right? And what does it mean to feel safe in your body? And how do you know when you're not safe? Sometimes that disconnect between what your mind thinks and what your body's saying. Oftentimes it's like turning to the body first, be like, what is alive and awake here? And like, oh, I feel tightness in my chest, or like my throat is clenched, or my shoulders are like this, or I feel just like my whole body is about to run. Recognizing those states, those felt senses in the body, and allowing that to be a guide, as well as like just acknowledgement of like, this is true. This is what my body's feeling right now, and it's responding to the world and the environment appropriately.
To follow on what you just said, trust that whatever your body's feeling is true. It is real. I might be responding to something that's not happening in this moment, right in the room where I'm sitting necessarily, but that doesn't change the experience that I'm having. So both can be true, right? I'm very lucky. As I sit in my little music room having this conversation with you, I am, as much as I possibly can be, safe. Absolutely. And yet, at the same time, my mind and subsequent body is aware that the world we are collectively living in is not safe, and it's increasingly less safe than it has been recently. So both things can happen at the same time. I talk to people about this all the time. It's like, well, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And I'll say to them at some point, fine, First step is to just acknowledge that you do feel this way and sit with that for a second. I promise you, at a certain point, once your body has had a chance to calm down, your brain will come back online and we can figure out the why of it all. But the why doesn't really matter if what's happening is happening. Yeah?
The why doesn't matter, and also you actually can't access it when you're
Right.
in that fight or flight stage. Once your
Exactly.
body has taken over and is just like, we are not safe, and all of those like, hormones, chemicals like just are
Yep.
rushing through
Cortisol,
you, right?
adrenaline, everything.
It's like that part of your brain, just like your frontal lobe goes offline. You're
Literally.
grasping for life, and your body's like, we don't care. That is not important. We are not looking at that right now. This is what is important. Allowing that to come back online eventually, right? But it's like paying attention to that state that's screaming at you.
Sometimes I'll use the example of a little kid, whether it's a parent I'm talking to or a kid who has recently been a kid. I'm like, what happens if you are taking care of a little kid who's throwing a tantrum? Do you try to talk them out like a 3-year-old? You try to talk them out of their tantrum? Like, it makes no sense. Of course not. When a child is in the middle of a tantrum about something that is deeply important to them, at least in that moment, they can't hear us. As parents, the decision is to stand back and create a sphere of safety so the kid can learn to self-regulate. That takes time more than anything else. Give them a little time to let themselves calm down, not calm themselves down, but like create the space to allow their nervous systems to calm down. Once that's happened, you can sit with them and say, okay, what was that about? What are we talking about? What are you so afraid? Whatever it is, right? You can have that conversation. And I think the analogy is useful sometimes.
Yeah, like that idea of like containment and support and
Yep.
allowing that spike of adrenaline and emotion to end. You need a supported environment for that to happen.
Safe. Yep.
Safe, right? And so like if I'm thinking about kind of even just an example of seeing something upsetting that's not happening in my room, activates that feeling in my body. I can start thinking like, oh, it's because of this or whatever, but I have to actually just like, attend to myself and be like, okay,
Yes.
this is the state that I'm in. What does my body need right now? There's often some type of physical intervention that needs to happen, like whether it's breathing or I need a glass of water, I need to sit down.
It's a hold myself or whatever it is.
It's like paying attention to the body and then doing something with the body, right? It kind of has to be both. And then you can think about it once that's sort of happened.
For me, as I said, I think that's where the trust comes in because in the moment, it's sort of a panic feeling, or it can be. If I can remember, even while I'm having this panicked experience, okay, I don't know the answer, but that's okay. I'm going to worry about the answer later. I'm just going to take care of myself in this moment until I regain my ground or I'm able to regain some balance. And then I can think about what's actually happening, right? Say to people sometimes, write it on a sticky note and stick it on your computer. Sometimes having that mechanical cue when you're beginning this journey of awareness is very helpful because it is shifting patterns and processes that can be a mechanical process, at least to begin, until you get the hang of it. Ultimately, we're going for body memory. But before that happens, having those cues can be helpful.
You have to practice it if it's not familiar to you and you've never done before. And also especially if you've had trauma or you spent a
Yes.
lifetime overriding your body's feelings and not feeling safe or actually not being safe and like your head telling you it's fine or like just do this or just keep moving or just
Well,
whatever.
your head or all the other adults around you when your child's saying, everything's fine, don't worry about it, everything's fine. Meanwhile, your body is like, it's not fine. What do you mean? And to your point, if we're told we're wrong enough, we start doubting ourselves. So often in therapy, whether you're 18 or 57 or whatever, people will come in and it's about regaining that trust, right? That trust in the body because many of us have been taught to override ourselves, kind of like don't believe what your eyes can see. That needs to be rebalanced.
I know the term gaslighting is really overused, but that sense of like you have a sense of what your reality is, and someone saying, no, that's not your
I
reality.
know.
Like when you're young and you can only rely on your parents or your environment or your caregivers, if they're telling you something enough, you're like, well, I guess they're right. They have so much control over my life and they tell me what to do and I have to listen. And it's like, yeah, it's not like it always has to come from that, but I think there is a way in which, and I'm thinking not just from that particular parent's point of view, but it's probably something they have also learned. Like it's generational. I'm sure their parents also overrode their own feelings and just said, suck it up, let's move on. And so that's how they've learned to parent without, looking at themselves in terms of a different intervention.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to say, I mean, the way we framed this conversation is about bad state actors and the nefariousness that seems to be surrounding us. And I think that's true when we're talking about the political landscape that we're all swimming in at the moment. But when we talk about early interventions and parenting, I think it's important to mention that most of the time, parents don't have a malicious perspective. One of the most common experiences can be a parent struggling and wanting to protect their child from the knowledge of whatever the struggle is. And so, with the best intentions ever, we'll say to a kid, everything's fine. Don't worry. Everything's okay. Meanwhile, the kid may not understand intellectually what's going on, but has that felt sense picking up on whatever's going on for the parent. It's a misunderstanding, miscommunication. And to your point, it's the parent's beautiful intention, but lack of knowledge around how to address that in a way that's a bit more authentic, right? So that they can address what the kid is actually experiencing in a, age appropriate way. And all of that is sort of skill acquisition, but it's not because of malice, I don't think, for most people.
And I think it is important to make that distinction, like nefarious intention and then also actually like good intention that gets executed poorly.
It's a completely different perspective, right? I work so often with teenagers and families, and I have yet to work with a family where the issue was lack of love. I guess it can exist, but it's not very common. It's nearly always generational trauma, lack of support, and really lack of skill. I think one of the roles that we play as therapists often, or certainly I find myself playing, is really in skill acquisition. It's like you got a toolbox and you've got a couple of tools rattling around in there, but let's help fill it out with a bunch of other things that you can use.
Absolutely. The reason you're bringing it back to childhood or how you learned what felt safe in your body, if you got different cues or like got overrode, there's that level of mistrust. And so when you're trying to learn to do that differently in adulthood, and that's why it takes practice, right? Because you've had a lifetime of overriding your actual felt sense where you're like, no,
Right.
something feels wrong, but they're saying it's not wrong, so I guess I just go along with it. And that's not just in families, right? That can be cultural society. Like, it can have wide-ranging effects. But the idea that it starts with going back to your body, caring about how it feels in the moment, noticing it and supporting it and giving it what it wants or needs, anyways, that's going to take time and practice, and it's not going to be easy.
Exactly. Just learning. I love what you say. The thing that came to me as you were talking is that this seems to come up so often for people who are quite intelligent, actually, or people who have used their intellect as their main strategy for survival. They seem to be, and I definitely can speak to this from a personal perspective, it's harder to shift. I grew up using my brain as a way to keep myself safe. I could use intellectualism and my ability to think my way out of things. Often I'll say to people, the reason you're hitting a wall is because this is not something you can think your way out of. If you could, trust me, you would have by now because you've done all the work. It's just you're using the wrong tool. It's a beautiful tool. And the whole point is we're not going to throw that tool away. It's just not the right tool for this. Our bodies contain so much data. If you just use your ability to think, your intellect, your brain, it's like trying to make an analysis, but you don't have any data. It doesn't matter how powerful your analysis machine is. If you don't have any data to sift through or to process, it's not going to work. Bringing the body back as that cornerstone, that foundational knowledge of what is true and real and what is happening for you. If we know that, even if it's hard, even if it's painful, even if it's scary, at least from there, then our brains come back online and we can make a plan. We can make a plan to access safety or support or whatever it is that we need to do. But it's got to start from our bodies first. And our bodies always know. So, for example, if you're okay with this conversation about safety, what do you notice your body responses as we're having this conversation?
I can definitely feel some activation in my body of not feeling entirely safe. And it's like a bit of a pit in my stomach, chest feels a little bit tight. I feel a little bit revved up in some particular way. It's not so overriding that I can't tolerate it.
Right.
It's a really loaded topic, It's hard not
Sure.
to feel the actual activation of it in my body as we talk about it. What about for you?
Yeah, similar. There's a holding in my stomach for sure. I tend to hold my breath a little bit. I usually speak even more quickly than when I'm feeling grounded and safe. I can live like this. It's fine, but everything's heightened. It's a sense of being ready. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I think it's about the awareness of it, right? And I say this to people all the time. It's fine that our bodies react in these ways. That's not a bad thing. But what we're really practicing is flexibility. So I know that after I have this conversation with you, I'm going to take 5 minutes and probably breathe and just be still and be quiet and give my body a chance to calm down. This is helpful. This is an interesting conversation. I think it's relevant. I think it's important to have. And then after the conversation's over, I'll go take care of myself.
Just because the feelings are uncomfortable doesn't make it inherently bad.
No,
And oftentimes, when we are doing something that feels important to us, it's like you can have that edge of body jitters in different ways, how it can show up for you. It's a difference between pushing through and ignoring that and including it, right? Like,
that's right.
I'm aware of these feelings in my body and I understand them. They're okay. And
They're
like,
just feelings, actually.
when your brain does come back online, that's when you can start to decide what you're going to do and have agency and choice, right? So it's like just because you get into a fight or flight state and then you're able to come out of it, it doesn't mean that you then ignore the thing that put you into that state, right? You just have to maybe look at it differently or have different supports or approach it in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, the advice that I talk about with my clients, and this is the advice that I give myself, is, the future doesn't exist. We've talked about this before. A lot of this time, if we are really activated and stressed out, I mean, if there is an actual bear chasing me, then yes, in this moment, I'm activated and ready to run and fight and do whatever. In reality, that's not what's true for me. In my safe little sitting room in Toronto, Canada, I'm safe, right? But my body is still responding to danger. So I don't deny the fact that the danger is there. But what I can do is pause and say, okay, in this moment, not the future, not the past, not anything else, but in this moment, am I safe? Am I okay? And in this case, yes, I am. And it's that series of moments, that series of check-ins. There may be a time that comes where I will not be safe, and then I'll use all of my skills and tools to get out of the situation or keep myself safe or run away or do whatever. But that time isn't now. So as a way to allow my body the safety and space it needed as, when I was a child to calm down, I remember that in this moment I am safe. In this moment I'm okay. And it gives me a chance to calm down. So it's practicing that flexibility, I think.
Yeah. And another dimension which we could
Mhm.
talk about at a different time, because I think it also is interesting and extremely relevant just for people's lives,
Mhm.
is the idea of safety being co-created relationally, like between
Yes.
the two of us. So it's like, it's not only that I'm safe in my house, you're safe in your house. It's like we are safe in the relationship between the two of us. And that's what can carry the harder conversation. Um,
Yes. As
talk
opposed to
more.
sitting around at 3 a.m. in the morning worrying about these things by yourself, right?
Yeah, it's like having
Feel
some
more safe.
connection, support makes a huge difference. And so like talking about like when are you relationally safe and like how do
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know could be interesting. I just feel like we've got a little too long if we went into it right now.
Sure. Next time, part two at some point.
Yeah, yeah, I think so, because that's another important element. There's the internal sense of physical safety, the environmental, and the relationally, all these different dimensions. How do you know when you're safe? How do you make something safe for you? And how do you know when you need to leave?
Well, that's foreshadowing, perhaps, our next episode. See what we feel when we get there.
I like
To
the
that end, I appreciate you, Michelle, and the safety that we are able to create together. I hope our listeners feel the same way.
yeah, back at you.
Everybody stay safe. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.